The Great Migration of the Nilotic peoples from the Upper Nile Valley into East Africa was not a single event but a series of movements spread over centuries. Each group moved at different times, driven by their environment, conflicts, and the search for better grazing lands. The migrations began roughly after 1000 CE, reaching their peak between the 15th and 18th centuries, shaping the ethnic map of Kenya as we know it today. The earliest Nilotes to enter Kenya were the plain Nilotes, communities who lived for their cattle and required vast open plains to sustain their herds. The Turkana broke away from other groups in southern Sudan and moved southwards into the arid lands of northwestern Kenya. Drawn by the open landscapes around Lake Turkana, they adapted to the harsh climate, becoming experts in survival under drought conditions. Their movement often brought them into conflict with neighbors such as the Pokat and Samburu, but their resilience ensured they remained dominant in the dry north. Another group, closely related to the Maasai, branched off and settled in the north-central highlands of Kenya, stretching into present-day Isiolo and Laikipia. They maintained the cattle culture but also interacted with Cushitic groups like the Rendil, adopting and exchanging cultural traits. Perhaps the most famous of the Nilotic migrations, the Maasai moved steadily south along the Rift Valley corridor. By the 17th century, they had established themselves as powerful warriors, controlling wide stretches of the Rift Valley from northern Kenya down into Tanzania. The Maasai were feared raiders, expanding their herds by taking cattle from neighbors. At their height in the 18th and 19th centuries, they dominated vast territories, only later weakened by rinderpest, drought, and colonial encroachment. The Ateso, unlike the Turkana or Maasai, pushed westwards and settled along the Kenya-Uganda borderlands, balancing pastoralism with small-scale agriculture. Their location placed them at the crossroads between Nilotic, Bantu, and Cushitic communities, making them highly adaptive. While the plain Nilots were carving out the plains and valleys, the River Lake Nilots were making their way southwards along river systems. The Luo, originally from southern Sudan, moved into northern Uganda before advancing into western Kenya around the 15th century. Their migration was guided by rivers. They followed the Nile and its tributaries until they reached Lake Victoria, where they found fertile land and abundant fish. Unlike the pastoral plain Nilotes, the Luo became fishermen, farmers and herders, combining all three for survival. By the 16th century they had established themselves firmly along the shores of Lake Victoria, where they displaced or absorbed earlier Bantu and Cushitic groups. Their settlement gave rise to a vibrant fishing culture and rich oral traditions that remain strong today. The Highland Nilots, later collectively known as the Kalenjin, came in smaller, gradual migrations into the Rift Valley highlands. Their move was less dramatic than that of the Maasai or Luo, but equally significant. They occupied fertile escarpments, valleys and high-altitude regions where mixed farming thrived alongside cattle keeping. Groups such as the Nandi and Kipsigis settled in the southern Rift Valley. The Tugen, Kayo and Marakwet spread across the central Rift escarpments. The Pokat moved into the northern Rift, and the Sabao settled around Mount Elgon. Because of their highland geography, these groups became skilled farmers and herders, producing surpluses of grain and livestock. Their location also made them fierce defenders of their territory, as seen with the Nandi resistance against British colonial expansion in the late 19th century. As the Nilotes moved southwards, they encountered Cushitic and Bantu groups who had already settled in parts of Kenya. These encounters shaped their migration in three ways. 1. Conflict competition for land and cattle often led to wars, especially between the Maasai and their neighbors. 2. Assimilation. Some Nilotic groups absorbed earlier communities. For example, elements of Cushitic culture can still be traced among the Samburu and Pokat. 3. Trade and exchange. The Luo settlement by Lake Victoria opened them to trade with Bantu farmers, leading to cultural blending in food, language, and customs. By the end of these migration waves, the Nilots had firmly established themselves across the plains, highlands, and lake regions of Kenya. Their movements not only shaped their own destinies but also altered the history of the communities they encountered.